Before we get into the show, this episode is brought to you by Widewail. The team at Widewail has one more Voice of the Resident live event for you. This is it, the last one. On June the 6th at 3 p.m. Eastern, they'll cover everything resident reviews have to teach us about retention trends. The 45-minute live session will be based on research from 400,000 Google reviews, providing data-backed answers to common questions. Does investing in parking reduce turnover? If our amenities don't meet expectations, does that cause renewal problems? We know maintenance impacts retention, but by exactly how much? Using AI topic and sentiment analysis, Widewail's identified the trends driving positive and negative retention outcomes. Sign up at widewail.com/data. That's Thursday, June the 6th at 3 p.m. Eastern. Sign up at widewail.com/data.
Welcome to Leading Your Culture, brought to you by the Multifamily Media Network. I'm your host, Bill Nye. While serving in the United States Air Force, I was selected to attend the U.S. Air Force Leadership School, which is still the foundation for many of my leadership beliefs. That experience set me on a course for a successful career in business, consulting, mentoring, training, and speaking. In this series, my guests will come from many disciplines to discuss the most serious and at times not so serious topics on leadership and culture. Well, welcome back, everyone. Of course, you know who I am. I'm Bill Nye. Hopefully you've seen me before. You've watched some of my previous podcasts. And so I try to bring on people who are experts and know things that I don't know. That's an actually pretty low bar because there's a lot that I don't know. And I found a guy that I've known for a really, really long time. That makes him sound like he's old. He's not that old, but we've known each other for a long time. And so Mark Kukrow is our guest today. And he is the founder of Plus One Consulting. Mark, you've been doing this, as you shared with me, for 20 years. As long as I've known you, this is what you've done. What I find interesting about what you do is that you have undoubtedly incredible technical skills. And it'd be so easy for you to work for a management company, become somebody's director of maintenance, have a good living, collect a good paycheck. But you decided years ago to start out on your own and offer training and consulting, specializing in a tremendous need, which is the service team or the maintenance team in the multifamily industry. Real quick, what in the world made you leave the comfort of a regular paycheck and go out on your own and risk everything, your family, not that your family would leave you over this, but you know what I'm saying, just right. the comfort and the security that comes with being on somebody's payroll.
So I think I've always been somewhat of a risk taker, an entrepreneur. I get that from my parents and just the way I was raised. Throughout my career, I've been consistently told, you should start your own company one day. You seem so much like the type of person that could add to the industry, and I can tell that you enjoy it. And so about 20 years ago, my wife was pregnant, twins were on the way. And, I thought to myself, I'm getting a little older. I was in my 30s at the time. That was old back then. And I thought, if there's ever a time to do this, like now is it, because very often if you give yourself a way out, you take a way out. So I basically just said, okay. I talked to my wife. She's one of the few people that supported me and didn't take the safe route. And I knew I had her support. And so I started a website. I made a few phone calls. I got one client after another. And 20 years later, here I am, and I'm still speaking at conferences and teaching technical seminars and doing certifications. And throughout my time in the field, I started to notice how much training made a difference in the field, in the office, online, offline, in person. And it was my passion. It was a perfect alignment of everything in my life and in my career at that time. So I went out on my own, and here I am.
And so, full disclosure, I've hired you in the past. You've done training for me and my team. And you and I have crossed the country together multiple times on the speaking circuit. We've been on the same plane from time to time, going from one conference to another. And so, I've had the opportunity to rub shoulders with you many, many times. And I have a pretty good sense of who you are, your character. But the thing I try to focus on with this podcast, Mark, is leadership and culture. And I believe very strongly that you can tell a lot about a company's culture by their philosophy and strategy for developing their team. Because ultimately that's what training is, right? It's human development. And so I think when a company really commits to training and developing their team, that says an awful lot about their culture. It says that they're trying to grow something that's really special. And so, you're traveling around the country and you're kind of seeing it out there for yourself firsthand, kind of from we say from the 40,000 foot view. Are we doing a good job?
So we have a lot of room for improvement. Let me put it that way, right? So there are
we're
some
not doing a
companies-
good job.
We're not doing a good job. So there are some companies that have a waiting list to get in to this day, at this current day as we speak, but the majority of the companies are not doing very good. They have wonderful intentions, they do their best, and very often they try to maximize the impact of their training. And they'll go with online programs, which I have, and they're available, but we have to have more than just one type of training. But there's a saying I like, and all of the armed forces use it, and that is never let training be the cause of your demise. And you either lead from the front or someone else will. And so what does that mean, right? So if you're going to lead from the front, are you investing in your people? And I don't mean just tell them they should be happy to have a job and work there, but when you hire someone, what's the first thing they say? How was I treated? How did I feel? What was my experience on the very first day like? Was I thrown into a tank full of sharks? Was I thrown into a place that welcomed me and gave me undivided attention and led by example? And not only did I get undivided attention, but I got the tools and the resources that I need. And there was no way as a new employee I could say I didn't have every single thing I need to do my job. And solely my performance now rests on me. And so as an industry, we really need to do a better job. I mean, one of the things I presented recently was, if you look at all the service industries, and my goodness, have I done a lot of research on this, and I could give you tons of references, but I'm going to boil it down. Out of all the service industries, there's not a single niche that trains less than multifamily. None. So we need to really address that, because if you look at multifamily as a whole, the people in the general population don't really know what multifamily is. If you're in multifamily, most people are like, oh, how would you not know? But if you went to a dinner with 20 strangers and you asked them what they do for a living, and one person at the table said I'm in multifamily, probably 19 out of 20 would ask, what is that? I didn't know that was a career choice, right? So the awareness part and the training, and we can get into it more, but I think we really need to do a better job and
So what you're saying is, sorry, don't mean to interrupt, but what you're saying is, I take my car into a mechanic. That local garage does more to train their mechanics than multifamily does their mechanics.
That's exactly what I'm saying. And
that other industries are outpacing us in terms of training.
If you go to Chick-fil-A, I know most people use them as the example. You can't even work with a customer for 30 days.
Right.
Public
because the first 30 days is nothing but training.
Yeah, several $1,000s a year. So if you look at just the local places that you go eat, fast food, service, AutoZone, whatever it is, they train not even a little bit more. I would say 4 times to 20 times more than the average technician in multifamily.
Okay, so you and I come from the same bowl of cloth. We're a couple of wrench turning maintenance guys, right? I mean, that's what I did. 30 years ago, I was a maintenance supervisor in Durham, North Carolina. You were a prior maintenance supervisor. So you and I were working on people's air conditioning. We were working on their dishwashers, their refrigerators. We were turning apartments. We were doing the same thing. I can tell you how much training I got. Zero. None.
Right.
They hired me, handed me the keys, and then wished me well and said, try not to screw up. And I'd never worked in multifamily before. I'd never lived in an apartment before, other than when I lived, I guess it would be considered an apartment in base housing when I was stationed overseas at Yokota Air Base in Japan. I had no multifamily or no apartment experience, but I had good technical skills. I knew how to work on stuff, but nobody took. I didn't even know what the term skip meant. I thought skip was what you do with a rock on a pond Or will the little boy and girl
Yeah.
do hand in hand down the sidewalk? They skip, right? I got zero training. And so that doesn't surprise me to hear you say
No.
that we are at the bottom of we're at the end of the pack. We're behind the tail when it comes to the wolf pack, right? And in terms of training. So why do you think that is? What's your personal theory or philosophy on why we train or do such a terrible job of training?
So I think a couple of it. One is perspective too. And most of the times we just expect people to apply for a job that's a technician and they have technical skills. So then we're kind of
So they know
surprised.
how.
They know how. And
I
the
don't have to
interview,
train you. You should already know what to do.
right. If you're applying to be a technician, clearly you should know what you're doing and you have certifications. Now, let me just focus in on this for a second.
I know where this is
Certifications
going.
are not training. What
That's
the
right.
certification does, I give everyone there is. They transfer in the industry, they transfer liability from an organization to an individual, and the perceived byproduct is that they're more valuable because they should know what they're doing. But how many people have a driver's license? And you're like, my goodness, how do you think what you're doing is okay in the field or on the highway?
Right.
So those are not training, they're just transfers. So then what training do you get? Most management wants liability-based training, fair housing, sexual harassment, customer service, something in that category of
And those things are
liability.
important.
Yeah, they're important because they can get you in a lawsuit. But
Right.
what is also important is that they get technical training in the field so someone's furnace doesn't catch fire. So someone gets a quick response and a timely, correct repair done the right way, and they don't have callbacks. And so I think first, people just expect you to show up. Secondly, what happens very often is if you need a position filled, you're already stressed, you're under duress, and you have this overwhelming sense of urgency to get relief, and you don't want to let the person go when they show up because you just got relief in the field, and you have to suffer a little bit longer to have a better outcome. I don't know anyone that had it easy that really can gain that perspective. You have to kind of suffer through those challenges in order to appreciate it. But people don't really leave when you train them and you take good care of them and you treat them well. It's usually when those things are absent, they leave.
I wanted to dive in on that because you and I both spoke in San Antonio in April this year.
Right.
And I came into your session. I was there the day before I was scheduled to speak, and I stood in the back. You had no idea I was back there, but I was back there pumping my fists and just nodding and shaking my head because of what you were saying. You were sharing with the audience some statistics about, when we train versus when we don't train and the impact that has on employee retention.
Yeah.
Share that
So
with us.
specifically the number, and if for anyone watching this, write it down. This is a golden line of a milestone. And that is that if you train somebody diligently, effectively, and thoroughly within the first 4 months, they are far more likely to stay almost 3 years. If you don't train someone, most hourly employees, trades workers, service technicians, they will leave within 120 days. So companies that have good training, the golden line for you is get the person past 120 days with all the training and resources they need, and they're most likely going to stay for several years. If you don't provide training with an initial experience that's very positive, the turnover is significantly and remarkably higher if you don't. So if you want lower turnover, train them and get past 100. Because what happens, here's the thing, think about this. I show up, was I welcome? Yes or no? Did I get what I need? Yes or no? How was I treated? Now the honeymoon phase is over. How am I being treated for the next 2 or 3 months? I'm going to stay or I'm going to leave. How can you say I value you as an employee, but I won't train you because we can't do without you? And so it's this immediate conflict of interest, and if the promises you make in the interview are going to be determined to be true or not within 40 to 120 days.
Oh, 100%.
And
Absolutely.
so then people leave. They just start looking right away. And so if you can get people the training that they need, and not just certifications and liability training to make them win at their job and bring home something winning in their life, you're going to be much better off for it. So that's the number. The golden line is 120 days.
See, this is where it's so bizarre, Mark, because the one thing every management company in America is saying that is one of their biggest struggles is what? Hiring for the service team.
Yeah, correct.
Right?
And
So
why did they
we
just
finally
leave?
hire someone
Yeah.
after having an open position forever. And then what do? We do nothing to ensure that they're successful or happy. We just
You
hand them
can't
the
hire
keys
someone and
and
abandon
say,
them in the
get to
field.
work.
Yeah. You can't just abandon them because what
But we
happens,
do.
Bill, like, forgive me for talking over you, but
It's okay.
they guess based on what they got praised for in their past, and they will continue to repeat that behavior unless otherwise reprimanded. So there's no even guidance. There's just, welcome to the team. We're going to leave you on your own. We'll let you know if anything goes wrong.
Right. And then when something goes wrong, we get upset with them.
Yes.
And yet we've not laid out any expectations. We've not provided any training. I mean, look, I think the online distance training, the LMSs, they're important. I think it's an important element within a management company. But here's what I see is that far too many companies say, oh, yeah, we definitely provide training. And what they mean is we give people a password and they log in and they sit and they watch a video. Your first week, you have to watch, 15 videos.
Yes.
And then we say, yes, we're training our people. And I'm not diminishing the importance of those videos, in the distance learning. I think it has its place. But to think that's a healthy approach, that's absurd.
It's like, okay, so everyone learns slightly differently. How you pour into people. Some people can look at a screen, and we both have online programs, but they're a supplement. They're a part of training. They're not the
Right.
total of training. So how do you explain someone to get a feel for something through a screen? It's kind of difficult. It's got to be in person. There has to be dialogue. There has to be challenges, and you have to feel the tools and go out in the field. And so it's not, online is not enough, and in the field is not enough. And you need just-in-time training. You need micro learning. You need online, and you need in-person. You need it all. And each person will have kind of their own percentages on what they absorb the best and the most. So it is not, in the shoe store, they're all different sizes and they're not all the same. And yet we want to have this, oftentimes, a very centralized approach. And here's your standard kind of process to training. But if you are hiring someone to do mostly HVAC work, the root skill that you need to improve is electrical. If they do appliance repair, the root skill is electrical. If they do electrical work, all of the skills are electrical. So, like, what are the root skills that you need that overlap the easiest? And I think we need to provide more. And for example, when I was an HVAC contractor, we had to drive in a truck with someone for 30 days before you could go out on your own call. And it was just kind of a standard thing. Even if you were amazing at your job, what they wanted you to learn in the field was judgment also, on like how to deal with a difficult situation, a difficult customer. What are the phrases that you use? What are the responses that you give? The promises? What are the promises you don't give? And so that judgment, the behavior, is usually what gets people in trouble in the field. Behavior and judgment. And because if something doesn't work, you just call someone. But now there aren't enough people to call. And that's the challenge for the industry, is they're gone, they're retiring, and they're getting out of the industry. And then the people coming in don't have the same baseline reference, to the point where if you hire someone, you quite literally have to show them how to use a power tool. Screwdrivers come in numbers. A drywall screw can't be used to hang light fixtures. You need a steel screw. And, just things like that. Like, you would just never think we have to do now. But if you want your phone fixed, they'll probably fix it for everyone that's in a different generation in 30 seconds, So,
Right.
yeah.
Right.
We'll be right back to the episode, but first, a message from our sponsor, Widewail. Widewail is in the middle of a fantastic data and research live event series called Voice of the Resident. It's 3 parts. Part 1, which covered our tour and move-in, and Part 2, which covered residency, are complete. You can now watch those on demand. The final event is on retention. You'll learn the most important retention trends Widewail's uncovered in 400,000 resident Google reviews. Part 3 is on Thursday, June the 6th at 3 p.m. Eastern. To register for Part 3 or watch Parts 1 and 2, go to widewail.com/data. And now, back to the episode.
So, you get on a plane and you fly around the country. I do as well. Any idea what kind of training a pilot goes through before they're actually hired by an airline?
It is thousands of hours.
Yeah.
in the simulator. And I don't have an exact number, but spoken to enough pilots to know that it's a
and
lot.
hundreds and some, depending on the airline, hundreds and sometimes over 1,000 hours actually, flying a smaller aircraft.
Yeah.
And so, you just don't go to flying a 737, straight out of college. I mean, because they understand the seriousness of it. And we appreciate that, right? Which is my point. The customer always appreciates a better trained person, always. Whether it's Chick-fil-A, to your point, whether it's somebody who's working on my garbage disposal, whether it's a passenger on a plane, we're grateful for the training that people receive. And yet we're sending our team into people's homes to figure out why their freezer's not freezing, and they don't have a clue what they're doing. And it's not that person's fault. We haven't trained them.
Yeah, if they're trained and they can't do it, fine. Then it's on the individual. If they haven't gotten the training, it's on leadership.
Absolutely.
100%.
100%.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So
years
I do
ago,
want to add two things here, though. So
go ahead.
If you want someone to go from 0 to moderate trade skill levels, it takes 3 to 5 years.
0 to moderate, 3 to 5 years. 3 to 5 years meaning hands-on experience?
Yes, of hands-on experience.
Field experience. So
let's say you get in an HVAC truck, you work with an electrician. About 3 to 5 years later, you can pretty much do most everything. There's still going to be things that you run into. So you become masterful around the 10 to 15 year mark, right? And then you're still going to have to learn and then keep up with what is being reintroduced. And so the half-life of that skill is around 2 to 2.5 years. So if you're not getting constant training, like just to maintain your skill, just to be at the same level of proficiency, you need about a week to 2 weeks a year of uninterrupted training.
A week to nobody's doing that.
Exactly. Right?
Nobody's doing that.
Nobody.
A week to 2 weeks of uninterrupted training. No one's doing that.
Training. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and then the other thing is, and I got this perspective really when I became a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu coach, and I matched it to multifamily, and that is organizations, people, and teams that train win. Organization teams and people that don't train don't. Mm-hmm. And it is that simple, but it is never that easy because you have to deal and go through the time without an asset, an individual that can benefit your company while they're in the learning process. And so if you wanted to assign, like, how long should it take someone to hit the ground running? There's no such thing. So stop even thinking that. People come in, they go through their learning curve, they go through their assimilation process. Like, how many of us have driven a car for years? You get a brand new car and you're like, it takes me 3 months to find the controls.
Right.
So it takes about 3 to 5% a week for someone to get in the groove. So it takes around 6 to 9 months before someone can really be autonomous when they enter a company or an organization. In my, and this is just based on my opinion and research and years of teaching and training. But I go with the 3 to 5% a week of the increase. And then when you're elite at something, you go about 0.5 to 1% a day to week, depending on how much commitment you put to it. So, like, for example, you've been training 10 to 15 years at electrical, HVAC, whatever it is. Now that you're like at a master level, you're just going to have very small increments, and the discernment is much closer than it used to be when you just entered the field.
Yeah,
and
sure.
So so if we started today, Bill, and I want everyone watching this to really think about this. If we said, okay, fine, Mark, I get it. We're going to commit to training like it should be. You would still have to wait 3 to 5 years to get moderate skilled technicians.
Wow. I mean, I just think about, so you're talking about the masters, you and I, back in the day when we did what we were doing, we worked with R12 and R22.
Yeah.
Right.
And now there's 5 different refrigerants.
Right. The need for ongoing training is imperative. It is critical, right? I mean, it's like I used to change my own car. I mean, my own oil. I used to change my own spark plugs. I would, I used to pop the hood and know what everything was under the hood of my ar, right? You probably feel the same way. Now I pop the hood and I just look at it and say, I better go to a garage. I have no idea what half the stuff is.
Yes. Yeah. And, my father said something when we were young, and I remember we were putting the brakes on one of my cars, and he says, here's how it works, because I'm not going to do it for you. And he would teach with his hands in his pocket.
Yeah.
And he said it takes 2 hours to do the first one, 30 minutes to do the second side.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so,
Right.
when you become like really skillful at HVAC or plumbing, everything else kind of makes sense, and you can accelerate your learning in that. But it's going to take a lot longer for the first set of mastery skills, and then you can build on those faster.
So, Mark, over the years, I've led a couple of organizations, and one of the things I'm very proud of is the fact that we had little to no turnover, well below industry standards. I ran a management company in North Carolina for 8 years, was their CEO. In the last 2 years I was there, we literally 2 years had zero turnover, zero in 2 years. No one quit, no one got fired. 2 years, zero. Not making that up.
So why?
Ran a much larger company in Pennsylvania for many years. And the last year I was there, we had 24% turnover at a pretty big company, hundreds of employees. 24% in multifamily is unheard of. And I'm going to tell you, one of the big reasons was that we committed a tremendous amount of time, money, and resources to training our team. And so they knew we cared about them. We were invested in them. They mattered to us because we put our time and our money behind what we said. It makes a huge difference. Companies have got to they've listen. One of the things that really just frustrates me is when market conditions tighten, we get rid of what we think is the fluff. And the fluff is marketing and training. First things to go, marketing and training.
And
that is so short-sighted.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
If anything, that's a time to double down on your marketing and training, right?
Better. Okay. So here's the thing. The overall market for employment is trimming down, not for services, not for trades.
Right.
Good luck, right? Finding someone.
Right.
Yeah. So I'm going to just kind of build on your statement is why was there no trade? So anyone watching this, here's what I want you to do. Go look at all the companies that are the top performers in their markets, in the quartile, the region, whatever you use for your metrics and measurements, standards. And you tell me or figure out yourself if they have a good training program. You will not find a company that smashes their competitors that doesn't have a great training program.
100%.
And then if you treat your employees like, say, the capital project approach, we're going to do 20% a year. Well, that means every 5 years you have 100% brand new workforce that you have to train all over again. So if you have culture and training and people have resources, you don't have a new workforce every 5 years. And they stay and they stick around, and it's worth paying them to stay on board.
100%. And it makes your customers feel so much more secure.
Yeah.
Because of that familiarity. And they also know, I know you know what you're doing because the last time you were here, you knew what you were doing. So I have confidence in you.
Yes. And when they're confident, they'll approach you, they're comfortable. And if you can make someone's experience in their home more comfortable, where they can approach you and show some gratitude, and you're just, you know what, I'm so glad you called. You have no AC, I'd be upset too. I'm just glad you let us fix it. I remember the last time this happened 3 years ago. You have a great story. You have a human connection. People stay. And it directly affects the customers because they don't like turnover. You don't want to, who wants to live somewhere where there's a new staff every 6 to 12 months? Nobody.
Right.
So it makes a difference. And those are the intangibles that will eventually result in numbers when you know how to ask the right questions. And that is, are you truly pouring into your people? Like, I think I used the analogy at Texas of building a home. Imagine having a framing crew build a home for a family, and they passed around a box of nails and a hammer. And you got 4 guys on the roof passing a box of nails and passing around a hammer. That's no way to build a house, Bill. But yet here we are with 4 technicians that do AC calls, and they have to wait for a set of AC gauges to get passed around the staff.
Right, because the property only has one set of AC gauges.
Right. Like, do you have one computer for 4 people in the office? Like, it's such a contradiction.
Worth $70 million.
Yes.
And we can't afford a second set of gauges, a third set of gauges. It's worth $70 million.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And then, so what I often hear is, well, what if they disappear? Well, what if someone stole your computer? Would you never buy another one?
Right.
Like, you hired a thief. If they steal your toilet paper, you buy new toilet paper. That's like, that is not a sufficient answer. So
it's not.
No. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we're running our businesses, around the what if scenarios, and it's absurd. Hey, listen, this has been fantastic.
Thank you.
If anyone watching this wants to reach out to you, because obviously you provide a service that I don't think anybody else provides. There might be one or two other people out there that are providing it, but I don't know that there is specifically. So if anybody wanted to reach out to you and say, hey, I watched this and we've got to do a better job. This is one area where, we do leasing training, we do management training, we do systems trainings, but we don't do maintenance training. They want to reach out to you. How do they get a hold of you?
So my website is service team, just like maintenance team, serviceteamtraining.com or maintenancevideos.com. Either one, it goes to the same website. And my phone number's on there and everything else. So it's service team, like a maintenance team, serviceteamtraining.com. And you can find me on LinkedIn or go straight to the site. And if you hit contact us, it goes to a real human being, me, and generally one or two other people, and we'll get right back to you. But for the rest of my career, I am wholeheartedly committed to improving the level of training and professionalism in their industry, specifically maintenance and service operations in the departments and the technicians. So I appreciate you bringing me on here, Bill.
Yeah. Hey, listen, Mark, one of the things I think is important is that as an industry, we've got to raise the bar for our standards and what we expect of our team. And a big part of that is not only hiring quality people with quality, integrity, character, values, but then also training them so that they're really good at their jobs. Because look, when I approach a job, and I to this day, I still do a tremendous amount of work with my hands. And when I approach a job with confidence, I know what I'm doing. I just feel better about myself, right? I look forward to the task. I have a sense of anxiety when I'm tackling something that I'm not sure I know what I'm doing. And it's a shame that we have people out there get up and go to work every day and they're asked to do things and they're scratching their heads. They don't actually know what they're doing. I mean, how could they possibly enjoy their careers and their jobs?
I don't know. I think they're constantly stressed all the time. And it's like, if you're confident, I don't know everything. And I don't know I don't like to be around people that think they do. But I've been doing this for a long time. And if I don't know something, I'm going to call someone. And whoever I work for should be like, that's a good idea. And we rely on each other. Whereas if you're not very confident, you may hide the fact that you don't know something. And I just like to ask people too, like when they come on board, you're going to go to training no matter what. I'm going to send you to 3 courses within the next 6 months, day long, day and a half, maybe. Which ones would you like to go to first? And they're going to almost always identify their shortcomings. Right. But the thing is, like, I'm not for you're going, right? Like, that's it. It's because people don't want you to decipher in the interview that they might not know something and then fail to get the job. But if you're like, hey, listen, I don't know everything either. We're doing the best we can together. What 3 classes would you like to go to? Here's 7 that you can choose from. They're going to pick the ones they know will benefit them. So I think from the very beginning, you should let people know you're going no matter how much experience you have. And good leadership nudges skill and talent.
Yeah.
And
no,
so I think that's just a simple but effective thing to do.
Yeah. Listen, this has been a great conversation. Unfortunately, our time is up. I'd love to continue to have this conversation even more, but I know you've got a class to go teach. And hey, listen, it's always great to see you, great to catch up with you. And I hope people reach out to you because, again, what you do is rare and also what you do is incredible. It's valuable. And just from my own personal experience, you're darn good at it. So
well, thank you.
Certainly get a 2 thumbs up endorsement from me if that means anything to anyone. Mark, thank you so much. Good to see you. Good catching up. And to all of our viewers out there, thanks for catching another episode of Leading Your Culture with Bill Nye. Mark, take care.
Take care.